I want to talk about this Steph interview with LeBron. I had several little takeaways. First of all, I want to shout out LeBron because, like, you would think in a situation like that, LeBron is just, he's very much the center of attention type of personality. To LeBron's credit, I thought he did a good job of backing the hell off and just letting Steph run the interview. Like, everyone's there to see Steph. This is your podcast. You're going to have plenty of opportunity to talk in other situations. LeBron just kind of backed off. Steve Nash did a wonderful job just kind of queuing up questions, and LeBron like popped in here and then to offer his perspective. But it was very focused on Steph and his upbringing, his basketball development, his basketball philosophies. And honestly, one of the biggest things that stood out to me, Steph is just a remarkably smart dude. He's a great speaker. He's great at explaining his basketball philosophy. I found it to just be like very easy to listen to and very easy to understand how he feels about the game. There were so many interesting things that he dug into. I loved when he started talking about his body and the work that he put in behind the scenes to essentially build out all the elements of strength training to facilitate his style of play. He kept talking about this idea of building the chain. And like I talk about shooting with the concept of energy transfer, right? This idea of like there's a power. You push down on the floor with your feet, right, as you're jumping, but there is a chain of energy that goes all the way from your ankles to your knees to your hips to your core, all the way up through your shoulders. That is the transfer of energy through to the top of your shot. And any power that you lose in that chain puts extra stress on the top of your shot. And then it gets harder for muscle memory. When the muscle memory can be very easy and light, it's easy to replicate it, right? But when you lose energy up the chain, that's what forces it to be a higher stress shot at the top of the shot. And it's one of those things where like I just loved hearing him break down like all the specific details. He specifically emphasized core, which I thought was really interesting. He kind of was talking about like that kind of popping of the hips that occurs on most basketball movements, and the idea that like that is an area where a lot of players lose power. And I just thought it was a really interesting breakdown of the weight room, because the weight room is like something that we've talked about this on the show. Like, I think it's one of the most underrated elements of basketball development. Basketball is a contact sport, and you're dealing with physicality in every phase, whether you're setting screens, fighting through screens, fighting to get open, driving to the basket and winning that leverage battle in drives, boxing out for rebounds. We can go on and on. There's a million different ways that strength plays a role, but one of the biggest ones that we talk about is your base on your shot. You're like, Steph talked a lot about this, not in this particular interview, but in previous interviews about the summer of 2015. After having won the title and should have won finals MVP, in that summer, he dramatically increased his leg strength. And he experienced like a 6 point per game leap in his scoring average, literally from leg strength, from increasing the strength of his base. That is when you're sprinting full speed and you stop on a dime and rise up, it is all leg strength and footwork. That is what allows you to get into your shot. Steph's superpower, right, is his jump shot. It's when Steph is open, ever since the Davidson days, that shit's going in. And so the battle is, how do you get the amount of shots that you need? And I actually thought he did an interesting job talking about how like with Bob Myers coming up to him and being like, hey, like I think we should get you up to 15 threes per game. And like Steph's initial reaction was kind of like, damn, like, you know how hard it is to get 15 threes up in a game? And he's right. The point is like when you're a shooter and they're guarding you like a shooter, you're not just open 15 times a game. It's not like, oh, I'm going to get my 18 shots, I might as well make 15 of them threes. No, you got to get open 15 times for decent quality 3-point shots. And that is all in that leg strength, that chain that Steph is talking about, the ability to move and then to stop at any point in time and rise up and shoot. There's other elements to it, right? Like we're going to talk about the offense in a minute, the ball handling piece, the fluidity of connecting your dribble to your shot. There's obviously a lot more that goes into it, but I just thought all the stuff that Steph was talking about with building the chain physically to be an elite shooter was just you think of shooting as being like, oh, let's just go shoot 1,000 shots a day. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend like that's not the case. Like, you've got to put in the work behind the scenes, but there is a huge like bodybuilding element to it that I think is under discussed, and I really enjoyed him breaking that down. I loved the bit that he talked about with Steve Kerr's offense. So he essentially talked about that transition from, they win 50 games with Mark Jackson. Summer of 2014, they end up bringing in Steve Kerr. And one of the things that Stephen said that Steve Kerr said to him when he was kind of building out the initial offense was the idea of, he was like, I just want to make the defense make a ton of decisions on every single possession. And of course, my ears, those of you guys who have listened to this show over the years, that's a concept that we talk about all the time. My ears immediately perked up because I was like, that's super fascinating, because talk about being ahead of your time. This has been something that I've been keyed in a lot over the last years. 2014 is 11 years ago. Like, Steve Kerr was so ahead of the curve with his like basketball philosophy in the idea of generating good shots through essentially making a defense make a ton of decisions on every single possession. So for instance, like if you're running, let's just look at the two like most dramatic opposite examples, right? So we have the Steph Curry Golden State Warriors ball and player movement offense. And then we've got like the Luka Doncic spread pick and roll offense. Now there's a lot more complications in the Lakers version of it, but if you go back to like 2022 or 2024, where it's like a lot of like just spread pick and roll type of stuff with Luka, there's not a lot of decisions being made on the possession, right? Like the ball's getting brought up the floor. It's very brute force. It's, can you guard Luka in this one coverage or in this one-on-one, right? Like there's, at the level, there's deeper drop, there's blitz, there's switch. And in each of those four, you're essentially like removing decision-making and putting all of it on the job of Luka to beat that coverage. Like deeper drop, he's got to go hit mid-range jump shots, right? Against that, as the defender gets trapped on his side, he works him into the lane, hits those little floaters, right? Higher drop or blitz, it's going to be the short roll. You're hitting the guy in the pocket. Now we're playing 4-on-3 out of that, right? The switch, now we're giving a big an opportunity to guard Luka Doncic on an island, or a small guard an opportunity to guard Luka Doncic on an island. The lack of ball and player movement removes a lot of the decision making. The guys who are off the ball have pretty basic roles, right? Each of them have a help and recover responsibility depending on which spot they are in that shell drill, right? Then you flip the script to the Golden State Warriors offense, and it starts with pace, right? You're playing the ball up the floor quickly early in the shot clock. And then there's multiple interchanges. Steph made this like really simple example. He's like, let's say that there's a guy who, gets a kick out three on the right wing out of like one action. So just imagine a guy rips from the left wing, nail help from the right wing, swing pass, guy takes a three. Steph was like, that's not the same as the exact same shot that comes out of a possession where the ball's already switched sides of the floor 2 or 3 times. There's a rhythm that comes from people touching the basketball. There are upsides to getting deeper into the possession and making them guard multiple actions. Above and beyond the rhythm part, over the course of that, you present all of these opportunities for someone to mess up. If Steph runs off of 5 screens in a possession and you defend the first 3 really well, you switch them properly, or you stay attached physically and have help on any sort of back cut, and then all of a sudden on the 4th one, 2 guys run with Steph, someone messed up, now someone's wide open on the slip and someone's getting a wide open shot. A perfect example last night is Steph running off of that wide pin down from Draymond. Draymond slips into the open space, then he throws the behind the head pass to Moses Moody in the corner. That's a mistake that comes from the ball and player movement that forces a defense to make so many decisions on each possession. And when I heard that, I was just like, of course Steve Kerr was on top of this concept like way back in the summer of 2014. He was ahead of the curve, and he took what was already a good team in that Golden State Warriors team and pushed them up to 67 wins by essentially weaponizing the threat of Steph and Clay's shooting through multiple actions on every single possession that force defenses to make a ton of decisions. And as soon as somebody messes up, there's your opening. It takes an enormous amount of trust. And like Steph talked about it, how it was kind of sloppy at first, and it took him a little while to kind of like figure out what kind of shots they were going to get in the offense and how to, basically how to execute it. But it was just really fascinating to hear Steph essentially point out that Steve Kerr was breeding this idea of like using ball and player movement to force defenses to make a ton of decisions on every single possession, inevitably leading to the mistakes that lead to the openings. Last thing I'll say, overall, I just was thinking about it as I was watching the show. I just think Steph is so damn cool, and he's so smart, and he's so fun to listen to talk about the game. And he's become, I think he's the fifth best perimeter player of all time. He's become literally one of the very best basketball players to ever touch the floor. And it's just kind of funny because I hated his ass 10 years ago. I hated him because obviously I was a younger fan and I was rooting for the LeBron led Cleveland Cavaliers, right? And so rooting against him made me hate him. But it's been so funny because like over the course of the last, 6 or 7 years, especially as I've started to really learn about the game, as I've studied the NBA and tried to become more familiar with how NBA basketball works, and then obviously just getting distance from the rivalry. Like Steph's just one of my favorite basketball players of all time, and he's just completely won me over. And I just really, really enjoyed listening to him just talk about basketball for 45 minutes yesterday. It was an excellent pod. I'm looking forward to part two. I'm hoping that they kind of dive more into the Steph LeBron rivalry in that second episode. I would imagine they will, and so I'm excited to see that when they come out with that. All right, guys, that's all I have for today. As always, I sincerely appreciate you guys for supporting us and supporting the show. We'll be back tomorrow with more game reaction. I will see you guys then.